My parents decided to spend these winter holidays in the village at the house of my paternal grandparents. I didn't want to go. I said that I'd rather study for exams. After all, the graduation class, the Unified State Exam, is a serious matter. Mom and Dad allowed me to stay at home without their supervision for the first time in my life. I finally felt like an adult who was trusted, albeit with reservations. "So that everything would shine when we arrived," my mother instructed, when she and my father were already standing in the hallway, dressed. "It's going to be okay. I'm not a child," I replied, knowing I wouldn't do anything. "That's the thing. I'm not a child," Mom said, looking at herself in the mirror. "You're going to be the boss here. You're going to bring friends. Girls," the father added with a cheerful wink. "Well, at least shut up. You have one thing on your mind." Mom bumped his shoulder. It looked more playful than angry. They were always a joke. They argued fervently, jostled, and said taunts to each other. In other words, they were always running a little house circus. "Everything will be fine," I promised. "I don't need any guidance. Mom, go quietly. Hello to Grandma and Grandpa." And Mom went at it again. "He'd better come with us. When will you see them again? They're not getting any younger. See you in the summer." What to do in the village in winter? I asked and immediately regretted it. My father immediately perked up. How to do what? To steam in the sauna, diving in the snow, a beer. Mom slapped his hat. He immediately wilted. "I'll give you a beer now." That's what she said. "Let's go already." They went out the door. I shouted after them, "Have a good trip. Have a nice stay." Mom waved her hand. And finally, silence. The incessant voices of the parents finally died down. They had been married for almost 20 years, but they still couldn't talk enough. When was the last time it was so quiet at home? For the next 3 days, I enjoyed this incredible happiness. I ate what I wanted. I used to watch TV shows. I played computer games until my brain turned to mush. Time flew by, unnoticed. Exam preparation? What kind of training is there? I barely had a day and half a night for entertainment. It was a pity that sometimes you still have to sleep. How I wanted to stretch this long-awaited freedom. I was looking forward to a few more such senselessly joyful days. But the next morning, the phone rang. It was Mom. "Still not really awake," I answered in a hoarse voice. "Yes, Mom." Silence hung in the receiver for a few seconds, and then a quiet voice was heard. "My son." "What?" I asked. "Grandma and Grandpa." Her voice trembled and faded back into silence. "Mom, why are you stuck?" I shouted into the phone, sensing something was amiss. "Grandma and Grandpa are dead," Mom said. "What? Are they dead?" I couldn't believe it. It just didn't make sense. "Why, all of a sudden?" "Yes, my grandparents are dead," Mom confirmed, and her voice sounded hollow, as if through cotton wool. He sounded sorrowful and deeply tired. "Why?" I asked. "We don't know," the mother replied softly. "When did this happen?" "Just what?" I asked. "No, we arrived, and they're dead," she replied. "Why didn't you say anything?" 3 days have passed. All this time, I was wallowing in sweet selfishness, not knowing that there was a tragedy in the village. No one told me anything. Yes, they somehow spun in the heat and completely flew out of my head. Mom said softly, "I just walked away a little bit, and I remembered that you don't know anything yet." Her desperate calmness made it scary. "I just don't have the words," I said. My hand was so weak that the phone felt too heavy. "Dad says that you should pack up and come to us," Mom added. "Right now?" I asked. "Yes, he's asking right now," the mother replied. "We are one family and we should be close. You will come." "Okay, I'm just going to clean up and get on the train." "Come on, son, we're waiting for you." The call ended, and I sat in bed for a long time, staring at the wall, and could not put myself together. That's how life ends, suddenly and cruelly. Yesterday you thought that everything was fine with your family, but today the news falls on you. They're dead and gone. I blame that damn village for it. This is a backwater of Antokin. Even though it's not far from the city, it's only half an hour by train, but what a lonely night. There are only a few inhabited houses left, scattered among abandoned buildings. No school, no medical center. How does anyone live there anyway? If someone gets sick, the ambulance will take a long time to arrive. It is not known from where. And after all, people stayed in this village not only because they had no other options. My father had been trying to persuade the old people to move to the city for years, but they wouldn't hear of it. They said, "Come on, how are we without a vegetable garden?" My grandparents seemed to be two fussy people who just didn't know how to sit still. They needed to have an endless pile of things to do in order to feel constantly busy. I remember how they came to visit, and on the second day, they were climbing the wall out of boredom. My grandfather tried to fix and glue things that didn't require urgent repairs, and my grandmother baked basins of pies that inevitably disappeared. These people were not adapted to a carefree existence in the city, so they lived in their village. In the end, they died, locked up. I got up, took a shower, got dressed, and went to the train station. I rode the train like I was drugged, looking out the window without a single thought in my head. There were gray pillars, misty fields covered with yellow, dried grass and white snow. January slush, dirty, blurred, a picture of despondency. The train stopped at an empty concrete platform. I went out, went down the steps, and wandered along the puddled road. There was silence in the village. The houses stood like tombs. For many, you can't tell where someone else lives and where there's no one else. Although they were obviously abandoned, with empty windows, overgrown with dry ivy. I remembered the road well and quickly reached the old brick house of my elders. My father's car was parked in front of the house, a black Jeep lightly dusted with wet snow. The gate was unlocked. I went up to the porch. He didn't knock, but immediately pushed the door open. It was also open. The smell of corpses immediately hit my nose, and it was almost as cold inside the house as it was outside. At the other end of the corridor, my father floated out of the darkness, dressed in a jacket, scarves, and boots, as if he had just returned from the street. His face was gray, and his eyes were frozen. I've never seen him like this. But this emotion turned out to be completely understandable. Dad came on vacation and found his parents dead. What was it like for him? "Hi, Dad," I said. "Hi," the father replied, barely audible. "Why does it smell like that in here?" I asked, feeling that noxious stench scratching at my lungs. "What do you think?" Dad replied sternly. The old people died, but the boiler was working. They've been lying here for a long time. Horror was all I could say. Why is it so cold now? If you heat the house, then there will be such a dead stench that you will not be able to breathe. These words from my father's mouth sounded somehow cynical. He was still talking about his parents. He probably had time to harden his heart from Abba. Sudden disaster. I see, I said quietly. Where's Mom? He's sitting in the room. My father nodded at the door on the right. I walked slowly towards it without taking off my shoes. Footsteps, and creaks echoed throughout the house. Mom was sitting on the corner of the bed in street clothes, in a coat with the collar turned up, in boots, and even in gloves. Her lips were pale from the cold. There was no expression on his face. His gaze seemed to be fixed on nothing. "Hi, Mom," I whispered. She turned her pale face to me and answered, "I arrived. I wanted to see you so much." I asked, feeling unbearably sad. Mom didn't answer, but just lowered her head. A few gray hairs caught my eye, which stood out in the dark strands. "She hasn't come to terms with it yet. Let her sit," my father said, standing behind my back. His voice sounded hollow and almost indifferent. Mom seemed to be grieving more than he was, even though it wasn't her parents. Mom and Dad became like strangers. I didn't recognize them. Where did those joking, funny spouses go? They were consumed by grief. Was the sight they saw a few days ago really that horrific and traumatic? How are you here in this cold? I also spoke in a low voice, as if he was afraid to break the fragile silence of the gloomy house. "Why are you so cold? Don't take off your clothes, that's all." My father replied without joking. "Okay." I went into the kitchen, filled the electric kettle with water, and found a mug and tea bags on the shelf. I wanted to keep warm with something hot, and then a thought came to me. Isn't it dangerous to drink or eat something in this house? "Dad, what happened anyway? Did Grandma and Grandpa get poisoned by anything?" I asked loudly, looking into the darkness of the doorway. "No, they didn't get poisoned," my father replied from somewhere in the hallway. "Where did you find them?" I asked. "By the cellar," said the father. "At the cellar?" "Right in the hallway then." That's why it stank the most. But it was still unclear what they died of. My parents didn't seem to explain anything on purpose. I warmed up after drinking tea, then went into the small room where I was always accommodated during the holidays. Everything was the same as before. A small bed, a carpet on the wall, dusty cabinets, and an old heater. I opened the window and aired the room. The fresh air slightly diluted the thick dead smell. Then, he turned on the heater. He settled down on the bed and put his feet up on it. All that remained was to wait for instructions from the parents. If 3 days have passed, then the funeral is most likely tomorrow. I spent the whole day on my phone, flipping through meaningless clips, not waiting for Mom and Dad to contact me. They were talking about something with each other. Their wistful voices came through the wall. My parents were joking, laughing, or arguing. "Why did this happen to us?" Mom asked. "What did we do?" "We have to accept. Nothing can be fixed anymore," her father reassured her. "I'm angry at them. I can't help myself. Like now Vasya. You don't feel sorry for Vasya. Why did we invite him here? Let him stay in the city, Luda. It's too late to think about it. We're a family, and we have to do everything together." I listened to it and thought, why push it so hard? Yes, the old people died. It's bad, but it's not the end of the world. Sooner or later, it would have happened. I'm not surprised. The unpleasant smell discouraged any desire to eat. I only went to the kitchen sometimes to make myself tea with sugar. So this senseless day of mourning passed. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep in a cold room. And I woke up at night in pitch darkness. Only the red light of the heater hung like a bright dot in the darkness. The framed windows were shaking in the wind. Boards creaked in the hallway as if someone was walking there. And suddenly, the door jerked. I locked it in the afternoon to keep at least a little warmth and not breathe this smell of death.
Vasya, is that you there?
A soft female voice sounded. Well, who else? I replied, thinking I was talking to my mom.
Take it away.
The door was yanked again. I asked, feeling goosebumps tickle my arms.
Open it.
Another raspy voice was heard. What do you want? I asked, already doubting that they were my parents. The voices were too old.
Unlock the door already,
someone growled rudely.
He also asks, what do we want in our house?
And the door jerked again. Mom! Dad! Is that you? I asked into the darkness.
No,
the woman replied.
These are your grandparents. Why is it closed? Open up.
You're dead. That's what my parents told me. I said, feeling my consciousness float. They died, Grandma whispered eerily.
And what now? Are you not our grandson? Open it for us. Let us look at you. It's been a long time since we've seen each other.
The air in the room became unbearable. There was a smell of rot from under the door. Go away, I said, as if begging for mercy.
I'm going to shake your soul out of you.
Grandfather barked angrily. This part was like him. The old man sometimes became rude, and death did not change him.
Calm down,
Grandma hissed.
Are you crazy? Let's go. Let him sleep already. We'll do everything tomorrow.
The boards creaked. A door slammed somewhere. It became quiet, which means we'll do everything tomorrow. Without undressing, I crawled under the covers, covered myself with my head, and covered myself like a baby. What was that just now? Did Grandma and Grandpa come from the other world? That's so terrible. I woke up shaking. It's even colder than yesterday. Snow fell outside the window. The glass turned blue around the edges. The old oil heater was running at full capacity, but it couldn't handle the cold. It seemed that the room had become more cramped, as if the house had shrunk from the cold. I remembered what happened last night, but I decided it was just a dream, so I opened the door without fear and went into the kitchen. He filled the kettle. That's how cold it is. It's a good thing that the water in the faucet is not frozen. A couple of minutes later, the father appeared, still silently grieving, dressed in a jacket, boots, and hats. What a jerk! It's just impossible, I complained. Maybe we should light the cauldron after all? There's no need to light anything, my father snapped, piercing me with a disapproving look. And I had such a nightmare. I almost died of fright, I said. The boiling kettle, as if resisting the cold, bubbled so violently that it shook, and a thick cloud of steam rose to the ceiling. The freezer is not at home. I dreamed of my grandparents knocking on my door and swearing that they would not be answered. I continued without waiting for any questions. Why didn't you tell them? Dad finally got interested. It was scary, I replied. They are not strangers to you, my father said loudly and sternly. Dad, It's just a dream, I said, not understanding his sudden irritation. Well, yes, a dream, Dad said softly, then turned around and left the kitchen. I made a tea bag, took a mug, and went to their room. He was standing at the window with his back to me, running his finger over the icy glass. Mom was sitting on the bed in the same position as yesterday. They both looked strange, even to people who were heartbroken. "When will the funeral be?" I asked, holding a hot mug in my hands. "How long are we going to sit here?" "What funeral?" my father asked without turning around. "Hello, what kind of funeral?" "Grandparents," I said. "They're all ready, where they need to be." The father jerked his head, pointing in an unknown direction. "Really? Then why are we stuck in this cold house? Let's go to the city?" All this time I thought that the old people were being kept in the morgue, graves were being dug for them in the local cemetery, and they had already been buried. Then why was I called here at all? I was frozen for a whole day in a smelly house. It's unclear why. Are the parents completely crazy about the disaster? "Why do we need a city?" the Pope replied quietly. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, unable to stand this stupid indifference. "Mom, tell him, is he kidding me? What are you two doing here anyway?" The mother didn't answer. She just sat motionless, staring at nothing. "Mom," I drawled. There was a faint sparkle in her deadened eyes in response. She opened her bluish lips and said softly, "My father speaks correctly. We're not going anywhere." I kept yelling, hoping to get through to them. "Why? Are you completely out of your mind here?" My father turned to me and said something ridiculous. "And who are we going to leave the house for? The house is old, there's nothing to steal here. Are you going to live here?" I thought they were crazy. "No, it's too late for us to live." There was a kind of resignation in her mother's whisper, as if she had accepted her terrible fate. "What are you whining about again?" "Guru," my father barked. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I was saying this, and the mug was shaking in my hands, and boiling water was pouring over the edges. "What does it mean to live late?" "We stay here," said the father. "The parents are below, and we are above." It sounded like complete madness, but I wasn't going to dive into it, so I said, "You're crazy. I went home. Goodbye." I was about to leave, but Dad quickly crossed the room and grabbed my hand in his jacket. I dropped the mug in surprise. Boiling water splashed on the floor. "Stop!" hissed an inhuman voice. "You're not going anywhere. This is our home now." "Let me go!" I shouted with all my might, trying to break free from his grip. The Pope's face was distorted with anger, but it did not turn red, but on the contrary, became even whiter. Deep black circles appeared under his eyes. He looked like a dead man himself now. The mother was sitting on the bed, silently watching what was happening. Her gaze seemed devoid of even a hint of life. "Hold him! Hold him! Bite through his throat!" A muffled voice came from somewhere under the floor. "Are you that grandpa over there?" I asked, glancing at the dark cellar hatch in the hallway. "Grandpa, Grandma, Mom, Dad, we're all here. Where are you going from your family?" said the father. His teeth looked dirty yellow against his pale face. I pulled my hand back and saw the nails coming off my father's fingers. One of them completely fell off without a drop of blood, and underneath it was gray, dead flesh. "What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you?" I shouted, even though I had already guessed it myself. I just couldn't admit it to myself. I could not have imagined such a horror. You really better go, son. Dima, don't touch him. Suddenly the mother said, "What do you mean, don't touch? Let's do what we have to do." My grandfather's voice rang out from the depths of the cellar. "Don't!" the mother pleaded, getting up from the corner of the bed. My father reached out to me again, but I pushed him sharply in the chest, and he fell. "You ungrateful bastard!" his father groaned. I was lucky that I was already quite an adult, and we matched his strength. "Come here, son," his mother said, staring. I was lucky that I was already quite an adult, and we matched his strength. "Come here, son," his mother said, gawking. "We're already dead. We're dead. Grandpa and Grandma killed us. I want to cry, but I can't. You see, there are no tears. I'm dead." She confirmed my guess. "That's right. They're dead. Everyone here is dead, except me. They sit pale and cold in this icy house, like in a morgue. And it stinks of corpses everywhere. I have to run right now. What are you, like a slob again?" My father grumbled, getting to his feet. "The main thing is that we are together. Hold him, he'll leave." I rushed to the front door. The pale mother followed me into the hallway and shouted, "Run, son, we are no longer people. There are no people here at all. They're ghouls. Run away from us." Her collar fell off, revealing a black wound on her neck. I tried to open the lock, but I couldn't turn the key. It kept slipping out of her trembling fingers. "What are you doing there? You can't get rid of a brat. Give it to me." The old man shouted with hatred, and then there was a crash, and the coffin, that basement lid, came off its hinges. I turned around and almost fainted from what I saw. The grandfather who crawled out from under the floor was not the one that I remember. He became a green corpse, with skin peeling off in patches, and there were no pupils in his eyes, only a cloudy yellowness. Immediately, Grandma poked her head out of the basement. She looked even worse. Green, bald, face like melted wax. It was impossible to imagine that these were once kind, loving people, my relatives. The old man was crawling towards me on all fours like an animal. The air was instantly poisoned, and gasping for breath, I yanked the handle and tore out the lock. "Stay where you are," the dead old man growled. I ran outside, into the snowy courtyard, into the fresh air, and finally, I could breathe. He stormed out of the gate and down the slippery road, not looking back at that terrible house. He ran through the whole village, not knowing where to seek salvation. Confused faces flickered in the sparse windows. When I saw them, I almost screamed, "Help!" But I realized in time that these were not real people. They were just like my relatives, dead men of varying degrees of decomposition. Pale, gray, green, floating. I was just incredibly lucky that there was a train at the platform at that very moment. The stop is only 2 minutes. I flew into the carriage at the very last moment, when the doors were already closing. The hood of the jacket was pinched, but I managed it. Managed. I can't imagine what would have happened if I'd stayed there. The train started moving and took me away from the dead village. Now, I'm alone in the apartment again. It's been a week, maybe more. The sense of time has completely disappeared. I didn't really sleep or eat. I lie in bed all day long, with my face against the wall. I shudder at every mention. Dead faces of relatives. Terrible words, the smell of rot. I want to scream. I want all this to turn out to be a monstrous fantasy, not reality. I want to fall asleep and wake up in a normal world. I want my parents to come back alive and well. Let them come into the apartment and say, "Well, how did you manage without us?" But I know it won't happen. They're not coming back. My mom and dad stayed in the dead village. They're not them anymore. And now, I'm an orphan.